The laughter echoed through the grand ballroom before the woman had even arrived. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above hundreds of wealthy guests dressed in designer suits and expensive gowns. Waiters moved gracefully between tables covered in gold silk. It was the most prestigious charity gala of the year, hosted by one of the city's most powerful CEOs and his glamorous wife. But behind the smiles, behind the elegance and polished appearances, something cruel was about to happen. A wealthy socialite had decided to turn another human being into entertainment. She sent an invitation to a cleaning lady, not because she wanted her there, not because she respected her, but because she wanted the entire room to laugh at her. What nobody expected was that the woman they mocked would walk through those doors and reveal a truth so powerful that it would leave an entire ballroom speechless. Before we begin, if you believe kindness matters more than wealth and that everyone deserves respect regardless of their job or background, please take a moment to like this video. Comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. The woman at the center of this story was named Angela Brooks. For nearly 12 years, Angela worked as a cleaner at Harrison Global Enterprises, one of the largest corporations in the state. Every morning before sunrise, she arrived at the headquarters carrying her worn lunch bag and a quiet smile. She cleaned offices, polished conference tables, emptied trash bins, and vacuumed hallways that executives walked through without ever noticing her. Most employees barely knew her name. To them, she was simply part of the background, but Angela carried herself with a dignity that couldn't be erased by a uniform. Life had never been easy for her. She had lost her husband in a tragic construction accident when her daughter was only 4 years old. Suddenly, she found herself raising a child alone while working multiple jobs to survive. There were nights when she skipped meals so her daughter could eat. There were winters when she couldn't afford proper heating. There were days when exhaustion felt unbearable. Yet somehow, she never allowed bitterness to take root in her heart. She taught her daughter, Maya, that character mattered more than money. She taught her that success meant helping others rise, not stepping on them. And above all, she taught her never to judge someone by their appearance. Over the years, Angela became known among the cleaning staff for helping anyone who needed support. When coworkers struggled to pay bills, Angela quietly shared what little she had. When someone lost a family member, she was often the first to show up with food and comfort. She never sought recognition. She simply believed kindness was something you gave freely. Meanwhile, in a very different world, Victoria Harrison enjoyed a life of luxury few could imagine. As the wife of CEO Richard Harrison, she was admired by social circles throughout the city. Her social media accounts displayed exotic vacations, designer fashion, and lavish parties. People envied her life. What they didn't see was her growing obsession with status. Victoria measured people's worth by their wealth. She valued appearances above character, and she often looked down on those she considered beneath her social standing. One afternoon, while visiting her husband's office, she noticed Angela polishing the glass walls of a conference room. Victoria watched her for a moment before turning to a friend. The two women exchanged amused looks. Something about Angela's simple uniform seemed to entertain them. That small moment planted a cruel idea. Weeks later, preparations began for the annual Harrison Charity Gala. The event attracted politicians, celebrities, business leaders, and wealthy donors from across the country. Victoria wanted the evening to be memorable. Unfortunately, her idea of memorable involved humiliating someone. She remembered the cleaning lady. With a smirk, she instructed her assistant to send Angela an official invitation. When several friends asked why a cleaner had been invited to such an exclusive event, Victoria laughed. She told them it would be amusing to watch her try to fit in among the city's elite. Word spread quietly among certain guests. Some anticipated awkwardness, others expected embarrassment. No one imagined what was actually coming. A few days before the event, Angela received the invitation. At first, she thought there had been a mistake. She stared at the elegant envelope repeatedly. Employees like her weren't invited to events like this. When she called the organizer to verify the invitation, she was told it was genuine. For a moment, uncertainty filled her heart. She knew she didn't belong to that world. She knew many people there would judge her. Part of her wanted to decline, But then Maya encouraged her. Her daughter, now a successful attorney, reminded her that she had every right to attend. After all, she had spent years helping keep that company running. Why should she feel ashamed? Angela eventually agreed, yet she had another challenge. She didn't own an evening gown. Her savings were carefully allocated toward practical needs and charitable projects she secretly supported. Buying an expensive dress wasn't an option. The situation might have discouraged many people, but Angela was resourceful. A local community center where she volunteered learned about her invitation. Several women came together to help. One offered alterations, another donated elegant accessories. A retired seamstress spent hours tailoring a beautiful gown. The generosity touched Angela deeply. She realized once again that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts. It was measured in hearts willing to help others. The evening of the gala finally arrived. Outside the Grand Hotel, luxury cars lined the entrance. Photographers crowded near the red carpet. Guests stepped out wearing outfits worth more than many people's annual salaries. Inside, champagne flowed freely while a live orchestra played softly. Victoria moved through the crowd greeting guests. She eagerly anticipated Angela's arrival. Several friends whispered and chuckled, expecting the night's entertainment to begin. Then the ballroom doors opened. The room gradually fell silent. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. Even the orchestra seemed quieter. Angela entered with calm confidence. She wore a stunning black gown accented with flowing gold fabric that shimmered beneath the chandeliers. The dress wasn't expensive, but it had been crafted with care, love, and dignity. She walked with grace. Her posture reflected years of overcoming hardship. Her eyes reflected wisdom earned through sacrifice. There was nothing awkward about her presence, nothing embarrassing, nothing laughable. Instead, she radiated something many wealthy guests lacked entirely: authenticity. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. The reaction wasn't what Victoria had imagined. People weren't laughing. They were staring. Some looked genuinely impressed. Others appeared uncomfortable. A few suddenly realized how unfairly they had judged someone they didn't know. Victoria forced a smile, but irritation began creeping into her expression. Her plan wasn't working. Angela wasn't humiliating herself. She was commanding respect. As the evening progressed, something even more unexpected happened. Guests started approaching Angela. At first, they were simply curious, then they became fascinated. Angela possessed a warmth that drew people toward her naturally. She listened more than she spoke. She asked thoughtful questions. She treated every person with equal respect. Whether speaking to a billionaire or a waiter, her attitude never changed. Many guests found themselves enjoying conversations with her more than with the socialites competing for attention nearby. But the biggest surprise came later during the charity auction. The gala's purpose was raising funds for educational programs in underserved communities. Throughout the evening, wealthy donors pledged impressive amounts, yet fundraising numbers remained below expectations. Then the host announced a special recognition segment. A representative from a nonprofit organization unexpectedly took the stage. She explained that before the auction continued, they wanted to honor an anonymous donor whose contributions had transformed countless lives over the past decade. Photos appeared on giant screens. Images of schools, scholarship recipients, community centers, children receiving books and educational support. The audience watched attentively. Then the speaker revealed something astonishing. The anonymous donor responsible for much of the funding had personally financed hundreds of scholarships. She had funded literacy programs. She had paid medical expenses for struggling families. She had supported shelters and educational initiatives across the city. The room erupted in applause. People assumed the donor must be a wealthy business leader, perhaps a celebrity, perhaps one of the powerful figures seated nearby. Then the speaker smiled and revealed the donor's identity: Angela Brooks. The ballroom froze. Silence swept across the room. Victoria's smile vanished completely. Richard Harrison looked stunned. Guests exchanged confused glances. How could a cleaning lady afford such generosity? The answer soon followed. Years earlier, Angela's late husband had invested modestly in a small technology company before his death. After many years, that investment unexpectedly grew into a substantial fortune. Rather than changing her lifestyle dramatically, Angela chose to continue working. She wanted to remain grounded. She wanted to honor the values she and her husband had shared. Most importantly, she wanted to use her resources to help others. So she quietly devoted much of her wealth to charitable causes. She never sought publicity. She never attached her name to buildings. She never bragged, she simply helped. The audience sat in stunned silence as the truth unfolded. Many wealthy guests suddenly felt small, not because Angela had more money than they realized, but because she possessed something rarer: humility, compassion, integrity. Tears appeared in the eyes of several attendees. People who had ignored her for years now saw her differently. Not because she had wealth, but because they finally understood the depth of her character. Then Angela was invited to the stage. The applause began softly. Within moments, the entire ballroom stood. Hundreds of people rose to their feet. The standing ovation seemed endless. Angela walked forward slowly, visibly emotional. She looked across the crowd and saw faces that had overlooked her countless times. Yet there was no bitterness in her expression, only gratitude. When she finally spoke, her words were simple. She explained that every person has value. Every person carries a story. Every person deserves dignity. She said that the greatest tragedy wasn't poverty, it was forgetting our shared humanity. Many guests wiped away tears. Even some who had mocked her lowered their heads in shame. The lesson struck harder than any speech they had ever heard. Victoria sat frozen. The woman she intended to humiliate had become the most admired person in the room. The joke had turned on its creator. But Angela never sought revenge. She never called Victoria out publicly. She never embarrassed her. That choice revealed even more about her character. Because true strength isn't proving you're better than someone else. It's refusing to become cruel when given the chance. Months later, the story spread throughout the city. People spoke about the cleaning lady who taught an entire ballroom the meaning of respect. Charitable donations increased dramatically. Several business leaders launched new community programs inspired by Angela's example. Employees throughout Harrison Global began receiving greater appreciation and recognition. And for the first time in years, many people started looking beyond job titles and appearances. Before we reach the end of this story, if Angela's journey has touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters. And here's a special request. Comment below with the words "character over status" if you believe a person's worth should never be measured by their job, income, or appearance. As for Angela, she continued living much as she always had. She still greeted people warmly. She still volunteered. She still helped others quietly. Because she understood something many people spend their entire lives chasing. Respect earned through kindness lasts far longer than admiration earned through wealth. The woman invited as a joke walked into that ballroom expecting judgment. Instead, she revealed a truth powerful enough to change hundreds of hearts. And perhaps that's the greatest reminder of all. The people society overlooks are often carrying extraordinary stories. The quietest person in the room may possess the strongest character. The person cleaning the floor may have more wisdom than the people standing on the stage. And every single human being deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of where they come from or what they do for a living. Because in the end, what leaves a lasting legacy isn't money, status, or popularity. It's kindness, it's humility, it's the lives we touch when nobody is watching. And sometimes, the person everyone expects to laugh at becomes the person nobody will ever forget. The standing ovation lasted nearly 3 minutes. Many people in the ballroom had attended hundreds of charity events over the years, but none could remember a moment quite like this. The applause wasn't for wealth, it wasn't for influence. It wasn't even for the millions of dollars Angela Brooks had donated in secret. It was for the woman herself, for the cleaning lady they had failed to see, for the human being they had judged without knowing her story. As Angela stepped down from the stage, dozens of guests approached her. Some wanted to thank her, others wanted to apologize. A few simply wanted the chance to shake her hand. Across the room, Victoria Harrison sat silently. For the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar: shame. Not the embarrassment of losing social status, not the discomfort of being criticized, but genuine shame for how she had treated another person. The image of Angela walking through those ballroom doors replayed in her mind again and again. She remembered every joke she had made, every cruel assumption, every moment she had looked down on her. And now she realized how little she truly knew about the people around her. That night, Victoria barely spoke during the drive home. Richard Harrison noticed immediately. The confident socialite, who usually dominated conversations, stared silently through the car window. The city lights reflected in her eyes as she thought about Angela's speech. Every person deserves dignity. The words refused to leave her mind. Meanwhile, Angela returned home to her modest house. The same house she had lived in for years despite having more than enough money to move into a mansion. Maya was waiting for her. When Angela walked through the door, mother and daughter embraced tightly. Neither needed many words. Both understood what the evening had meant, not because Angela had finally been recognized, but because a room full of powerful people had been reminded of something they desperately needed to learn. The next morning, news of the gala spread throughout the city. Local newspapers published headlines about the anonymous philanthropist who had stunned an elite charity event. Television stations requested interviews. Social media exploded with discussions. Millions of people shared the story online. The public quickly fell in love with Angela, not because she was wealthy, but because she had remained humble despite her success. People admired her refusal to seek attention. They admired her compassion, and most of all, they admired the grace she had shown toward those who had treated her unfairly. But while the city celebrated Angela, Victoria found herself facing consequences. Several guests who had known about her cruel invitation began distancing themselves from her. People whispered. Stories circulated. Some exaggerated details, while others revealed uncomfortable truths about her behavior over the years. For someone who had built her identity around social approval, the experience was devastating. For weeks, Victoria struggled. She avoided public events. She spent less time on social media. And for perhaps the first time in her adult life, she began questioning the person she had become. One afternoon, while sitting alone in her enormous home, she came across an old photograph. It showed her as a young girl standing beside her grandmother. Victoria stared at the picture for a long time. Her grandmother had been kind, exceptionally kind. She had volunteered constantly. She treated everyone with respect. She used to tell Victoria that wealth was a tool, not a measure of human value. Somewhere along the way, Victoria had forgotten those lessons. And realizing that truth hurt more than any public embarrassment ever could. Several weeks later, she made a decision. She wanted to see Angela, not for publicity, not for damage control. Not for appearances, she simply wanted the chance to apologize. Angela was surprised when she received the request. Many people would have refused. Many people would have enjoyed watching Victoria suffer. But Angela wasn't interested in revenge. She agreed to meet. The meeting took place at a small community center funded by one of Angela's educational programs. Children laughed in nearby classrooms. Volunteers moved through hallways carrying books and supplies. It was a world very different from the luxury hotels Victoria usually visited. When the two women finally sat across from each other, Victoria struggled to find words. The confident socialite who could charm any room suddenly felt nervous. Eventually, she spoke honestly. She admitted her cruelty. She admitted her prejudice. She admitted that she had invited Angela to the gala for all the wrong reasons. Tears filled her eyes as she apologized. Angela listened quietly. When Victoria finished, silence settled between them. Then Angela smiled gently, not because the pain had never existed, but because carrying resentment was a burden she refused to keep. She accepted the apology. The moment changed both women forever. For Victoria, it marked the beginning of a transformation. For Angela, it reinforced a lesson she had learned years earlier. People can change when they are willing to face the truth. Months passed. Then something remarkable happened. Victoria began volunteering at the very same community center. At first, people were skeptical. Some assumed it was a publicity stunt. Others believed she would quickly lose interest. But week after week, she continued showing up. She helped organize educational programs. She worked with fundraising projects. She spent time listening to families facing challenges she had never personally experienced. Slowly, she changed. The transformation wasn't immediate. Real growth never is. But little by little, the woman who once judged people by appearances began seeing their humanity. Meanwhile, Angela's programs continued expanding. More scholarships were awarded. More community centers opened. More children gained access to opportunities they otherwise would never have had. One particular student captured Angela's attention. His name was Marcus. He lived with his mother in a struggling neighborhood. Despite extraordinary intelligence, financial hardships threatened to end his educational dreams. Angela personally ensured he received support. Years later, Marcus graduated at the top of his class. Then he earned a medical degree. Eventually, he returned to serve the very community where he grew up. Stories like his became Angela's greatest reward. Not awards, not recognition, not media attention. Lives changed, dreams realized, generations transformed. That was what mattered. 5 years after the famous gala, Harrison Global Enterprises hosted another charity event. This time, things were very different. Employees from every level of the company were invited. Executives sat beside janitors, managers sat beside receptionists. Titles mattered less than people, and at the center of the evening stood Angela Brooks, not as a surprise guest. Not as an object of ridicule, but as the guest of honor. When she entered the ballroom, everyone rose to their feet. The applause felt different this time. There was no shock, no surprise. Only genuine respect. Victoria watched from the front row. Tears filled her eyes as she joined the standing ovation, because she understood something she hadn't understood years earlier. The strongest people aren't those who hold power over others. They're the ones who lift others up. Later that evening, Angela delivered another speech. It was simple, heartfelt, and unforgettable. She reminded the audience that every person carries unseen battles: the waiter serving drinks, the cleaner mopping floors, the security guard standing by the entrance. Every one of them had a story. Every one of them had dreams. Every one of them deserved respect. The room listened in complete silence. Some people cried, others reflected on mistakes they wished they could undo. But everyone left changed. Before we reach the end of this story, if Angela's journey has inspired you, please like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like these remind us that kindness can change lives in ways we never expect. And here's a special request. Comment below, respect everyone. If you believe every person deserves dignity regardless of their job, background, or appearance. Years later, when people spoke about Angela Brooks, they rarely mentioned her wealth. They rarely mentioned the famous gala. They rarely mentioned the headlines. Instead, they talked about the lives she touched, the students she helped, the families she supported, the hope she created, and perhaps that was the most beautiful ending of all. The woman who was invited to a glamorous event as a joke ended up teaching an entire city a lesson about humanity. The people who mocked her forgot her job title. They forgot her social status. They forgot every label they once attached to her, because in the end, they remembered only her character. And character is something no amount of money can buy, no amount of status can replace. No amount of power can imitate. The cleaning lady they underestimated became a symbol of compassion. The woman they expected to embarrass became the person they admired most. And her story proved a timeless truth. When kindness walks into a room, prejudice eventually has nowhere left to stand. The end. Read.